Q1 rather. The main causes for the overspend relate primarily to three items: modus, nexus, and car parks. All of these are very closely linked to the COVID pandemic. In the case of modus, we've had a shortfall, let's say, of 908,000. That was comprised of non-recurring business rates of 345,000, fitting out costs and valuation fees of 86,000, and foregone rental income of 477,000. Obviously, the business rates and the foregone rental income are inextricably linked. There is some good news on this. Today, Units 1A to 1C had their lease signed. Unit 2 has a tenant in it, and Unit 3A, the tenant is looking to complete the lease by the 3rd of April. So even adjusting for the rent-free period that is customary, we expect revenue to start flowing in Q2. As far as Nexus is concerned, and there's the final unit, 3B. I'm informed that they're in advanced discussions there for that to be leased out by Q1 next year, 2023. So the whole area will be rented out by then. As far as Nexus is concerned, we've got 474 shortfall. This comprises of ongoing site security costs, which are unavoidable, 160,000. Fitting out and valuation costs 42,000, partial recovery of business rates of 84,000, and foregone rental income of 188,000, making a total of 475. We have a tenant already in there. I can't give out names at this stage. We have 10,000 feet already rented out, and they are paying income. This has happened since the December, and we have another one which is just rented 3,000 feet, and we will start receiving rent in April. The remaining area is being fitted out, restructured into smaller units, which we think will receive greater market demand. The car parks, and I admit this quite openly, are a matter of some concern. The Water Gardens is 287,000 below, and the other car parks owned by the council 207. It's making a total of 494. I mean, this, what we're finding here is that even with the pandemic receding, work practices are not changing. And we're not getting the season ticket holders coming back as we hoped. People are, I don't think it's an issue of, let's say, car park fees. People just not, the demand has changed. We need to wait a bit longer to see, and we are monitoring this closely, to see if these patterns do change, if people will start coming back. But I think we also have to be prepared for the fact that maybe life has changed for good, as far as work practice is concerned. And so that's something which is a challenge, will be a challenge for us.
Moving to questions. Councillor, question.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few. Based on page 34, with my new shadow governance hat on, it says, well, I'm going to think there's some sort of grammatical error, but I'm not too fussed about that. It says process to review staff is now in train, which I don't quite know what that means. This is page 34, James. But it's just really, if I think it's important that this is discussed, could potentially get a little bit more information, either from yourself or from Simon, about the staffing issues, and kind of what you're doing to deal with it. As I say, there is an error on the page which doesn't really explain it. 34. Sorry, the governance bit.
So your questions around the staffing. I'm going to Councillor Gunn. Particular question. Councillor Gunn.
Well,
Thank you for the question, Councillor Vince. There are different areas around governance that have got different challenges and solutions in trade, which I don't think is an error. Would you clarify any specific parts of governance in mind? Detail on?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it kind of leads on quite nicely to my next sort of question, actually, Councillor Dunn, which is about obviously total complaints. And it's something I raised in the last council meeting, but I think it is still worth bearing in mind. My understanding from the last cabinet meeting that actually part of the reason there were part of the reason I was given for more an increase in total customer complaints was to do with council target times. A lot of that was to do with staffing. So I just wondered if that was still the case. I'm just hoping you could give this meeting some reassurances that obviously the issues with staffing are being tackled, and that obviously we are going to see a decrease in complaints, because it is obviously it's a trend downwards.
It's a trend downwards on the complaints, I believe, but I do get the point. Yeah, there have been staffing challenges to contact Harlow, but I think I'm right in saying that these are resolved and we are now up to strength on contact Harlow. So I've got no concerns about the staffing level in that service area.
Yeah, just come back from that sort of major sort of food share, because also on page 48 it also talks about certainly average waiting times, as I understand it, are up. So although there may be less complaints, obviously we know that the wait times are up, which obviously is a direct, which from what I understand is pretty obvious, I imagine it's a direct result of lack of staffing levels. So I just wondered if you could just clarify kind of where we are with staffing levels and kind of what has been done to ensure that actually those staffing levels are back to where they should be, and that actually we will see that come down. Because obviously, for all of us that have to get in touch with the council staff, waiting times are usually caused, particularly as we know we've had some pretty big emergencies in recent weeks that people have had to need to get in touch with us very quickly.
No, thanks. So reiterate what I've said, that the staffing levels in contact Harlow are where they need to be now, and I would hope and expect that will be reflected in the range of metrics, including waiting times, which I think remain good as compared to some of the waiting times you might get in other service areas. But it is something that I'm aware of. I appreciate Council Vince raising the concern. It is something that I think across the council we're very keen to improve on.
Thank you, Chair. Can I welcome the report from James, especially the comments about those next, because I know when you were my shadow, we had a lot of challenges about the design, building and the commitment to that. So actually I think the future is very bright, and the legacy that we have left is a very positive one from our administration. The issue I wanted to pick up was actually about car parks, because there is great concern about whether or not this will force up the prices, and I'm pleased that I believe James had given a clear indication that there would be no increase. I was just wondering, and again, I think Councillor Dunn mentioned it a few meetings ago about electrical charging points, and actually that is going to, I think, reduce our income in the short term for car parking, and I just wanted to get that confirmed. But also, the question I want is that I am aware that we are designing and developing new parking areas in and around the town. There's a development taking place in Potter Street. Are these going to be free car parking spaces, or are these going to be ticketed car parking spaces? Because that would help your income.
Thank you, Councillor. Before I hand over to the quick vote on that, I have asked for the situation to be closely monitored. It is an important aspect of council finances. In terms of policy around car parking charges, we've made a commitment now to raise any car parking charges, which I believe Councillor you acknowledges has given. Without knowing the specific schemes that we're talking about, broadly I would expect council car parks to fall into line with the policy across the town, which is that the first 3 hour of parking is free, as was, as you remember, a result of the very successful campaign over the initial budget to have that decision overturned and to make sure that that first 3 hour of car parking remained. And I'm very grateful that that campaign was a major success, but it's been a major boost to many local businesses where people want to just drop in for an hour to get the dry cleaning done, pick up a newspaper, or have some breakfast. So I see no reason why I would go against that very successful campaign and against your budget. But I hand over to the portfolio holder to give you maybe a more detailed appraisal. And if we can't give you an appraisal of these schemes at the moment, I'm sure we can get that information to you.
Sorry, Chair, if it helps, all I'm simply saying is that we are designing more parking spaces in certain areas. There is a cost implication of putting a machine in there to produce the tickets and then to check all these things based on the amount of cars that could be using those spaces. And I was just wondering whether or not those areas were going to be costed in to have a machine, or whether or not it was not that point that you made about free hour. I meant free, that it would be free from machines.
I suppose the reason I wasn't prepared to make an undertaking beyond that general principle was that without being cognizant of the specific schemes you're on about, there could be parking that are residential parking areas, or there could be parking that are in a commercial aspect, and that's why I wanted to make sure that we covered you specific details on the various areas, rather than a blanket approach, which I'm sure no doubt you would come back and remind me of if I gave you something that didn't quite fit.
No, it's just that you're building them at the moment, so I would assume you would have known that information.
Despite the fact that I appear to have a Newtonian intellect, there's only so much I can carry, and that's why I have portfolio holders to do the work. Councillor Gunn.
Thank you, Leader. This is residential parking. I'm not aware of any intention to charge.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions on the performance report? Councillor Edwards.
Just a question to Councillor Lethard. And on page 29 it talks about significant risks, etc., worldwide economic conditions. And what is becoming, it seems to me, increasingly clear over this last couple of weeks really, is that inflation is going to remain high and go higher. And that could have quite a significant, relatively quickly, have quite a significant effect on the Council's financing. And my question to you is, what will be the mechanism in terms of reviewing the financing and the impact, and how will that be addressed? Because there are certain assumptions that were made in terms of level of inflation is assumed to be much lower than is currently predicted to be the case.
Councillor.
Thank you for that question. Yes, I do take your point. Inflation is going much higher, and recent events are doing nothing to alleviate that. However, it is affecting certain areas more than others. I can't give you a specific answer on this. What I can tell you though is I've been speaking with the finance officer, and we're monitoring this on a weekly basis. Yeah. I can't say more than that at the moment.
Any further questions on the performance report? Comments? There being none, I'd just like to sum up by thanking the officers for the work they're doing in putting together these reports, and all the various service teams that work beneath them to do what the council does in what's been a very challenging year. So I thank all of those. I'd like to move now to the vote that we take recommendation A. I see all those in favour.